Hello, I'm Aiden from Acreworks, and we've got a Super Skeiner here in this box. I thought I would just talk about it. Let's go through the features after unpacking it just as if you'd received it in the mail and you were getting ready to use it to simplify your fiber life. So yeah, this is the box it comes packaged in. There's some instructions with some helpful tips and definitions. Pretty useful to follow these. This video will help go over basically the same topics on here, but these will always be there for you when you need them. Attractively packaged in this lovely protective material is this neoprene sleeve. Which is slim and protective. The whole idea here is that you could just pack this thing away like a book on a shelf and it'll take up zero room in your life except when you need it to help you out to skein some yarn without harming yourself. Yeah, you unzip it and inside there's this whole beautiful assembly. The counter comes packaged like this. We've just found a couple times in the mail they haven't fared so well, so we put a little bubble wrap on them to protect them. But you don't need to keep yours like that. Set the counter aside. Pull everything else out. And start setting other things aside. We'll call this the handle or crank. It's not really either of those things, but these are the arm plates or prong plates. You see how I'm kind of pinching to pull them off? They're these little springy dowel pins that fit into these holes. That's where they get stored. And then just to pull them off, you don't want to like crank that way, just kind of pinch like that. And finally, set this aside. We call this the spreader bar. The base, it's flipped over. So you want to be able to see the Acreworks logo and then pull up in the middle. It's almost like a cat's cradle kind of motion there. And that's what sets up the base. But for the moment, let's actually set the base aside. The original concept behind the Super Skeiner was, why does my Niddy Noddy have to hurt my shoulders? And this is a very compact Niddy Noddy, just this little bit in the middle. And if you put it together like this, this is actually all you need to wind a 2-yard skein. Grip it like you would if you're used to using a Niddy Noddy, and start winding here, doop, 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 and so on, and you can wind a skein, take it off, and that's really all you need. The problem with this, and the problem with any Niddy Noddy, is that your shoulder will fall off. And once you do thousands and thousands of wraps, your shoulder is going to probably want to retire if it hasn't already. So that's always available to you, but the base lets us do that same thing in a much more relaxed and happy manner. Okay, you can set it up any way, like this way or that way. It's reversible. The ends are interchangeable, and I've just kind of slipped the ends into what we call the, what were they called? The cup caps or something like that. I forget. And yeah, just the sort of spring force of the base holds them in place. There they are. And in this position, we are set up to wind a 2-yard skein. That's for each wrap that touches all 6 of the arms, 3 per side. It's going to make a 2-yard skein, so 2 wraps will get you 4 yards. But you don't need to count those wraps. The counter, as previously mentioned, turn it on. There's a power button indicated and then a 0. So turn it on. You might have to press and hold. This one's coming up already saying 0. Let me mess it up by turning the steel hex, shaft. Oh no, this says 5 wraps. I don't have 5 wraps on there. Something's terribly wrong. So turn it just till you hear a click. And when you hear that click, then press and hold the 0 button. And now I really am starting at 0. I'm going to put this right over here. Actually, no, I'd rather have it on the right side. Just thinking about my handedness. But again, it doesn't matter for its function, as long as you continue wrapping in the same direction you chose at the beginning. And you will quickly learn your preferences once you've used it. I'll put that over there on the right side. The handle or crank I'll put over here on the left side. That little click, these are held in with magnets. The magnets are not on the counter and the crank. They're actually in the spreader bar. So that's what's pulling them in there. This other piece of spreader bar is not really in the way. I'll take it off for now though, so you can see better what's happening. But when you're operating this, there's no harm in just leaving it stored in that position. So at this point, you are ready to wind a skein of yarn, and all you need is some yarn and a dispenser for that yarn. I've got over here one of our butterfly cates. I've already unfolded it and set it up and put a tinsy tamer just gently pressing down so it won't overspin as I yank the yarn off. But we will get started thusly. It doesn't really matter where you start. You'll find that one end of one of the arm plates has this little black button. This is a sort of click, click, push button that lets you later on take the skein off. You can slide it over. I think it makes some sense to start wrapping there, so I'll do that. I'll bring this around. And to get it started, you just need to create some friction. It's nothing new to us in the fiber world, right? Everything works with wraps, twist, friction, and I'm going to pinch it there, wrap a couple times, and I'm ready to go. And to go, I go to the next arm, pull, next arm, pull, next arm, and it's just a zigzag like that. It might feel a little counterintuitive at first, but you will very quickly begin to be very comfortable with it. Now the position of your skeiner to your lazy Kate is going to make a lot of difference in your comfort. These are going to come down to personal preference, the way your room and workspace is set up. I'm going to move my Kate farther off and change the angle of the skeiner, but it was working fine as it is. One thing that this skeiner offers is the ability to operate without being clamped down to your table. A lot of skeining tools, they're basically scaled down industrial devices that you've got to clamp to a table, clamp to a workbench. And the goal with this one was to make it so a little bit of friction, offered in this case by these little bitty rubber feet on the bottom, that's all that's needed. We actually custom injection molded those rubber feet out of a special material that offered a high friction with a balance for the stiffness that we needed to support the device. If you have it sliding around, clean off your surface that you're using it on, and with a damp cloth, clean off the feet. The things that dust can do to reduce friction constantly astound me. So keep on wrapping, and as with any skeining operation, at some point, I think it's inevitable, you're going to get tired of wrapping. The doorbell will ring, your kettle will boil, and it'll be time to make tea, whatever. One of the biggest and most important requirements when we made the Super Skeiner was you got to be able to pause, take a break, stop what you're doing and walk away. And this is what you do. You saw I just wrapped around the end, and it's stable. You could walk away for a week, it's fine. The counter will automatically go to sleep, or you could press the power button, and when you power it back on, it'll still be on the count that you were already on. It's just meant to be safe to walk away from. And then when your arms are feeling it again, when you've got your cup of tea at the ready, when you've dealt with your friends at the door, come back to it and unwind your little friction thing, and be sure to keep winding the same direction that you were. I mentioned the friction aspect of it. That's another reason that this isn't really like a proper crank, like you go roar and make a roaring noise with. A crank is going to see forces going over and down and over and up, and those over forces need to be countered by some sort of gripping, clamping, something like that. That's not compatible with our dream of a device that isn't, you know, difficult to set up, reliant on the thickness of your table, blah, blah, blah. So if you've got good friction, all you need is just to be nudging this around rather than cranking. And if you feel like operating standing up, there's kind of a natural, oops, lower the tension there. Yeah, there's sort of a natural kind of down press, other ways that can operate that work really well. As with other parts of this that I've already mentioned, it's going to come down to your personal preference. Another tip for operations is don't stretch it as tight as you possibly can. In fact, try to stretch each wrap of the yarn as loose as you possibly can. Bring it just so it's not sagging, and then make your wrap. What happens when you've got thousands and thousands, I keep saying thousands and thousands, of course this is totally compatible with wraps of mere hundreds, but as each wrap adds up, what seems like a small amount of tension per wrap gets multiplied by 6 for each wrap, right? Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things coming between the arms, and then multiplied 6 times the full circumference, the full number of wraps, and then that amount of force has really added up. The device can take it. It's really built to be beefy. We're using solid hardwoods and a very strong composite spreader bar. But you'll also find later on when you need to take it off, take your skein off of the device, it's going to be harder to do it then, and it'll also kind of spring down to a less predictable shape. So your measurement of how many yards you've wrapped will be off if you've really stretched it out. So for myriad reasons of just convenience and accuracy of measurement, take it easy and wrap it as lightly as you can. You'll notice also there's kind of a twist as you look at it. It twists this away as it comes between these two arms, and then it twists that away as it goes between these two arms, back and forth. And that's something that if you've used a 2-to-2 arm standard Niddy Noddy, that's pretty typical to see there. It just, I guess it kind of gets, multiplied here with the extra arm. What happens is when you take the skein off, that twist just falls out. It gets, I guess it vanishes because each twist is opposite the one before. And so the 6 twists get rolled out in 3 pairs, and there is a net 0 twist for your wrapped skein. Okay, well, let's call this good enough for this demonstration skein. I'm going to put it here for the moment and take the crank or handle off and set it aside. I'm going to take the counter off. Do you see how I'm kind of wiggling as I pull? It says I've done 21 wraps. So again, to do the math, I'm in the 2 yards per wrap configuration. 21 wraps. That's a good 42 yards I just wrapped there. Look at me, not even breaking a sweat. Except that my little room here is a bit overheated and I'm wearing a fleece. All right, the next step is to take your skein off. And so you remove the middle portion, the part I was calling the Niddy Noddy portion, and set the base aside, you need to look for the end that had the little black button. You can see here it is, and push the button in. I've actually, my starting wraps I put around the button, which you should not have done that. When you do that, don't wrap it around the button, because that will stop it from being able to push through. But you can see I slipped that off, not a big problem. And now I can slide the skein over the end there. And once the first loop of the 6 loops of the skein comes off, then you're free to unwrap the rest. But I forgot a detail. You are probably familiar with wrapping skeins on other devices, and you know that at this point there is a unique opportunity to preserve the order of the skein. So you will probably, depending on what you're doing downstream of this operation, you'll probably want to go in with some yarn ties and tie these off with a little figure 8 tie, hold it in this this skeined up shape. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create a mess. But here it is. Here is my messy skein, and then you can twist it and roll it and do whatever is right for your skein for the next operation, and move along with it. Probably you shouldn't do this. I should have mentioned this is inexpensive commercial yarn that has been twisted and untwisted 1,000,000 times in the process of testing prototypes and products, and it will get progressively fuzzier and untwisteder and knotted up and eventually replaced. So don't gasp. This is what we do in testing and so forth. All right, that's it. We've made a skein of yarn. You will want to make different skeins though. I'm going to zero my counter just by habit, turn it off. Sometimes you'll only have a little bit of yarn. Maybe you've just done a sample to test out a fiber. Sometimes you'll have a whole bunch of yarn, and depending on how much you've got, you might not want to wrap it at the default 2-yard length. That skein circumference will end up in a really glumpy skein once it's all twisted up if you've got a lot of yarn, or it'll end up in just a stringy loop if you've only had a sample size of yarn. So let's work from the inside out, talking about an itty-bitty sample skein. I'm going to pull this arm plate off and then look at the plate, and you'll see that there are these notches on the inside. You might also call it the concave side of the plate. On one side, all you see are 3 notches that pass all the way through. On the inside, you see 6 of them. So it's actually 2 sets of 3 notches. We want to pass through, the ones that go all the way through, these little nubbins here. So these little wing stops on each of these stop points. I'm going to pick the ones that pass through and just take it all the way through to the innermost position, and then turn the arm so that it's on the ones that stop, the ones that don't pass through. In this position, I'm going to wrap a 1-yard skein. So this one is a little unique. Unlike the other positions, this one you have to wrap kind of halfway up the arms. It's just the angles become very tight here. Okay. So that's a 1-yard skein if you wrap it there, and you can go and go and go, and of course do it on the base just as I demonstrated before. Now we want to do a 1.5-yard circumference skein. We want this to be at this stop point for the 1.5-yard circumference. So again, I'm pulling this one off of the wing stop, passing the wing stop through the through notch so it can go all the way through, and now coming back to the stopped notch so it stops there. And so again, I could put it on the base, either direction, doesn't matter, or do it in midair. And now for this one and all the longer ones, you're fine to just do it out at the end. It's only the 1 yard skein. Oh, I've got to push this. Remember to push this black button back out after you finish removing your skein. That's, I guess, an important part of the reset. All right, so now I'm operating, and this is a 1.5 yard circumference skein that I'm making in this configuration. So 1 yard, which again we could have done here on the base or holding it in the air, 1.5, and you can see I'm just turning it with my fingers. You don't super duper need the crank. Now, to go greater than the 2 yard default, that default circumference that I demonstrated initially, to go bigger than that, you'll find that this just has to hang out in the air by magic. And despite all the R&D we could do, we couldn't make that work. So instead, we're going to take both of the arm plates back off the spreader bar and reach for this extender bar, which you'll remember early on was stored here in the base. Take it out of the base and clear your work area if necessary. And take a look at the spreader bar. The ends are not symmetric. One of them is totally stuck in place. It'll forever remain there. And that one has the wing stops facing the same direction that these other positions do. The other end has a removable cap. You can kind of see the divider lines. So I would like you to remove that cap now. An aluminum bar with a magnet on the end holds the cap in place, and you can just snap, put it back on. A quick note, when you do put it back on, either as it is or on the spreader bar, the extension, make sure that the wing stop on the cap, this little knob here, is not lined up with the wing stops on the other parts of the spreader bar. So I'm looking down here and I can see that it's in between them. The goal when it's all assembled is for these arms to not be lined up. They need to be offset like this. That way each wrap, each wrap of the yarn is making the same angle of motion. If they were lined up, which you might have used a Niddy Noddy before where the arms were not twisted, it creates a weirdness and it is not as effective and even a skeining process. Okay, so remove the cap. It might need to be wiggle loosened when it's brand new. Put the extension on there, push till it closes, and then add the cap onto the end. Now again, check and see. Yes, they're not lined up. I'm going to go ahead and talk about a 2.5 yard skein. That's a pretty good, I don't know, next, obviously next step up from 2 yard, but it's also, if you've spun a lot, you may not want to go to the full 3 yard skein. That's what this setting will do for you. A 3 yard skein can do a great job if you've got a huge skein. It can do a great job of spreading that out and making a nice looking twist when you're done. It might, however, exceed the capacity of your Swift when you go to unskein it and turn it into a ball or whatever comes next in the process. So check your Swift's capacity before you go all the way out to the 3 yard skein. Some Swifts can do that, many cannot. So let's talk about the 2.5 yard. So leave this in place, and you want to move this arm plate not to this position, that's actually back at the 2 yard, but to this one. This is the 2.5 yard. And to do it, we move this away so it comes off its notches. We turn so the wing stop is lined up with the notches that go all the way through. Pass this through, and then turn it again so it's lined up with the stopped notches. And again, confirm that this arm does not line up with either of these arms. All right, so we just put it back on here. Oh no, there's a problem. The base needs to change as well because of the increased length there. So to do that, we need these slider blocks to move toward each other. And you can either pull or push, depending on what works best for you. when they're new, they are pretty stiff, so you might need to again, wiggle, pull a little bit. All right, let's put it in place. Doesn't matter which way. And now, the same wrapping procedure, same thing with the counter in place. Everything's the same, it's just going to make a longer skein, a skein with a larger circumference. And now, let's talk about what the counter really is telling us. The counter is not telling us how many yards we've wrapped. The counter is telling us how many times the device has made a full revolution. And so if you've been wrapping 1 yard skeins in that smallest position, or if you've been wrapping 3 yard skeins all the way out here, then to find your total yardage, the amount of yarn you've got on the device, you need to multiply that setting, whether it's 3, 2.5, 2, 1.5, or 1, by the counter that's telling you the number of rotations that it's made. So in this case, you'd multiply 2.5 by whatever it tells you. So that's how you tell it. Okay, I've gone on and on. There's probably more to say. It's an interesting and complicated device, but let's demonstrate how to pack it back up so you can put it away on your bookshelf and forget about it until it's time to make another skein. Or you can leave it out because it's a beautiful object and a great conversation starter. I guarantee there will be people who've never seen something like this before. Okay, to pack it up, you need to break it apart. Remove the counter first. Remove the handle or crank next. Remove the whole Niddy Noddy middle part and set it aside. And push the base back together. So those spreader blocks need to come apart, push, and then again, like the inverse of a cat's cradle kind of motion, you need these to fall flat and then flip over. And it's ready to receive all the different parts into their storage positions. Okay, I'm going to take the arm plates off, just pulling and lining up the wing stop here with the notch that goes all the way through, setting it aside. Just pushing this one straight off. And now I need to get rid of the extension piece and put this cap back on the base spreader bar. So I just pull it off here. This one's a little bit stiff because it's brand new. And I remove the cap. Oop. The extension bar I'm going to put here. You can see this black bit over here. And there is a magnet down in the base of that hole that holds this magnetic tip in place there. I'm going to put the cap back on, double check that the wing stops don't line up, and now the spreader bar stores in these notches over here. It just rests into place. All right, we need to put our, actually it doesn't matter order of operations, you can put the counter or the arms on next, but the counter goes in place like that. The battery side is up. If you put the screen side up, everything clashes a little bit. So put the battery side up, take your crank or your handle and put it in place here. And now take your arm plate and these two holes here go into these black pegs here, just like so. And this one you can choose any two of these 3 holes. Because it lacks this black button, you can do that. All right, so if you've done it right, the arm plates are not running into each other, they're kind of gently lining up next to each other, and you've got your hole set up here. You bring your neoprene sleeve back over, you pick it up by those carbon fiber rods, slip it in, and you can zip it shut. I recommend you store your instructions in there. We'll also keep that available online at our support page on our website, and you can also always email hello@acreworks.com and we'll help you out in any way we possibly can, or if there's any way we can't help you out, we'll find someone who can. There's always help available. I hope you really enjoy using a Super Skeiner. I hope you enjoy having it. Sometimes it's fun to have weird devices in your life. I know I'm guilty of kind of requiring that. And it's a weird device. It's a unique thing that I'm proud of us for having developed it. We got a lot of help from people in the spinning community who gave thoughts and hopes and dreams along the way, and then were generous with their testing time, giving feedback, trying it with a lot of different kinds of yarn, a lot of different quantities of different kinds of yarn, and it has become really a fantastic device as a result of all that input. All right, thanks so much for watching this video. Talk to you later.